Week 5 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few defenses I would start this week. The first one's the New England Patriots at the Houston Texans. So right here, the Texans, we know they've been abysmal this season on the offensive side of things, and they give up the fifth most fantasy points to defensive special team units here. So the Patriots last week played a pretty decent game, in my opinion, versus the Tampa Bay Bucks. I know they had no turnovers and only one sack, but they only gave up 19 points in that game. And I think week 5 at Houston here, indoors, better weather conditions, more traction for defense in this game, and David Mills, a quarterback for Houston. I think this defense could get to him early and often, and I think we could see a similar fantasy day for the New England Patriots like we saw in week 2 for them at the New York Jets, where they only gave up 6 points, had 4 sacks and 4 intos. I don't think they'll get 4 intos in this ball game, but I think I could see 2 or 3 turnovers made and hold this Houston team to a low scoring range in this ball game. The next defense I like this week's the Baltimore Ravens. So the Ravens 3-1 on the season, and their defense really hasn't hit their stride, in my opinion. Last week they played good though. 7 points allowed, 5 sacks, and an interception between the combination of Teddy Bridgewater, who left the ball game with a concussion, and Drew Lock. And now week 5 here versus the Indianapolis Colts on Monday Night Football. I think they're going to get to Carson Wentz. That offensive line, I know, is pretty decent over there in Indy, but Carson Wentz is a quarterback that we've seen for seasons now. Hold on to the football too long. Try to make the big play sometimes, and sometimes he makes the big mistake in the turnover. So right here, I think the Ravens, they're going to take advantage of that mindset from Carson Wentz, and it wouldn't surprise me to see the Ravens here find the end zone on a pick six or a fumble recovery, scoop and score in this one. And I like them a lot versus the Indianapolis Colts because they're going to get pressure on Wentz and cause that big turnover, in my opinion. The next defense is the Minnesota Vikings. So the Vikings this week have a great matchup versus the Detroit Lions. And right here, the Vikings, they're available, their defense, in 82% of fantasy leagues. So last week versus a pretty decent Cleveland offense, they held them only to 14 points, 3 sacks, and a 4th down stop if you play that in your fantasy leagues. And right here, the Detroit Lions, they give up the 7th most fantasy points to DSTs this season. So I think the Vikings in this one, they're going to play desperate in this ball game, especially at home, and then especially that they're 1-3 on the season. Because if they fall to 1-4 in that division with Green Bay over there, it's going to be tough for them to come back. So I think this defense is going to put in a good ball game. Jared Goff, we know he's a mediocre to poor quarterback at best, and he's good for a couple turnovers and taking a couple sacks in this ball game, in my opinion. So right here, I think the Minnesota Vikings step up in a big way and have a good fantasy day, and definitely a defense I would start this week. The next defense is the Las Vegas Raiders. So the Raiders, this is just a matchup-based type of start this week here for the Vegas Raiders, in my opinion, versus the Chicago Bears, who are either going to have Andy Dalton or Justin Fields at quarterback. In my opinion, there's not much of a difference because both those guys aren't producing. David Montgomery, the news has come out that he's out 4 to 5 weeks with a bad knee injury, even though Damian Williams, in my opinion, is a capable running back who's a definite 3-down running back as well. But right here, the Raiders are at home. They just play different and better at home, in my opinion, even though on Monday Night Football at the Chargers, that was a good ball game, and they only almost came back and won the game. But right here, the Raiders in this ball game, I like the matchup a lot. I think they'll exploit this offensive line in Chicago. And like I said, David Montgomery's out, so that's definitely a big loss for them too. And the 5th and final defense I would look to start this week's the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Steelers, they were a top 5 defense coming into the season, drafted by many fantasy owners. And so far this year, they just done nothing, in my opinion. They've done nothing this season so far, is the Pittsburgh Steelers, except week 1 at the Buffalo Bills where they had a double-digit fantasy day. But right here, it's a good matchup for the Steelers in week 5 versus Drew Lock and the Denver Broncos. Even if Teddy Bridgewater starts this game and plays, I still think the Steelers defense could get a few sacks, could hold this Bronco offense down to 14 to 20 points in this one, and get a few turnovers as well here. The Steelers, they need a win in a bad way, and it starts with defense and running the football, in my opinion, for the Steelers team, like it has for all these seasons. So right here, they're going to come out firing in this game, and I think they're going to get to Bridgewater or Locke, whoever starts this one, and have a good fantasy day and one much needed for them and their fantasy owners. So that's a few defenses I would start here in week 5 of the fantasy football season.